I used to shrink myself to fit inside their version of love. Quiet, obedient, invisible. But the day they gave me an ultimatum to leave the house, they handed me the blueprint for my freedom. I didn't just leave the house. I bought one across the street, and this time, I made sure they saw me. The smell of brown butter cornbread drifted through my parents' dining room in Durham, North Carolina, weaving itself around candied yams and slow-braised short ribs, and around the same tight silence that always sat at the table with us. I lined up the forks until they formed a neat little horizon, then took my seat like a stagehand who knew better than to step into the spotlight. I'm at 32,500 followers now. My younger sister Kenya called from the living room, lifting her phone like a trophy. Brands keep emailing. The wellness tour is basically happening. Dad gave an approving grunt. Mom tucked a perfect curl behind her ear and glowed at her. Your dedication is inspiring, baby. I slid into my chair, unseen as ever. I'm 29, still sleeping in the same room where my 6th grade posters once lived. Kenya is 24 and the family's designated rising star, mindfulness coach, digital course creator, community healer, depending on which pitch deck Mom handed out that week. Across the table, my parents traded the kind of look people practice before a difficult conversation. Mom's voice softened into that syrupy tone that always meant bad news wrapped in a compliment. Danielle, sweetheart, we should talk about your room. My fork paused over the greens. Kenya needs a dedicated recording space, Mom said brightly. The light is better in your room. Plus, her equipment ships soon. Before I could even breathe, Dad flattened his palm against a table so hard the water glasses quivered. Either make the room available or find somewhere else to live. Kenya twirled a coil of hair, smiling. You're not exactly composing symphonies in there, Danny. You've got files and spreadsheets. Silence fell, expectant and hungry. They were waiting for the old me, the girl who swallowed tears and apologized for taking up space. I cut a square of cornbread, chewed, and tasted only resolve. Because my little room wasn't just 4 walls. It was a command center. Shelves I installed myself carried finance texts dog-eared to oblivion. A modest desk held my laptop, the one that blinked open to a dashboard most folks would call improbable. While they applauded Kenya's open mic meditations and sponsored sage bundles, I had been building something they never asked about. On weekends in high school, I stacked shifts and studied after midnight. In college, I finished online certificates no one noticed. Post-grad, I built a portfolio and a client list brick by brick until my consulting work spoke with numbers no one in that dining room cared to hear. My thumb flicked across my phone under the table, past the apartment listings I'd been saving for months. I'd already been planning my exit. I just hadn't planned on making it visible. A memory rose up, clean and sharp. I was 15, counting out $640 in a shoebox, tips from the diner, odd jobs, and the scholarship stipend I stretched like taffy. That money was for a second-hand laptop I'd found online. Mom had stood in my doorway with that same sugar-sweet smile. Kenya needs a camera for her school project. Remember the arts incubator we're trying for? Dad took my shoebox without asking. Your sister needs this for her future. I remembered locking myself in the bathroom, tears cooling on tile, and promising the mirror I would never be at their mercy again. I placed my napkin beside my plate and stood. I hear you, I said evenly. I'll have an answer by next Sunday. Kenya's smugness flickered. Mom and Dad exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't in the script. At the end of the table, my kid brother Tyrese, 17 and suddenly observant, watched me, concern creasing his forehead instead of the usual smirk. We'll talk details later, I added, already heading for the stairs. Kenya, make a list of whatever changes you want for the space. I like to plan. Up in my room, I closed the door, exhaled, and scrolled to a contact I'd saved months ago but never used. Simone Hart, a crisp voice answered on the second ring. This is Danielle Rhodes, I said, eyes drifting to the for sale sign across the street that had taunted me all autumn. I'm ready to make the move we discussed. The next morning, Dad's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, email inbox glowing like a lighthouse in fog. No one was home but the dishwasher. I shouldn't look. If I were the girl they thought I was, I wouldn't. But the girl they thought I was had just been served an ultimatum about her own bed. A folder labeled Household Budget blinked up at me. I clicked. Line after line told its story. Ring lights, brand strategist retainers, PR energy cleanses, and retreat deposits. Every expense justified as business development for Kenya's wellness brand. One total at the bottom made my stomach tighten. $126,000 in revolving credit, interest nibbling away like mice in a cupboard. An email thread floated to the top. Talk of a second mortgage to cover a few months until the course launch. A new message pinged. Kenya to her agency, North Star Collective. Projected to hit 80K followers by next month. Momentum is wild. Dad had a dashboard bookmarked. I checked it. 12,418. The front door rattled. I closed the laptop and ghosted toward the stairs. Danielle? Mom called, breezing in with grocery bags. Don't forget, Sunday is your deadline. Kenya's been planning this conversion for weeks. My documents. We'll pack them for you, she sang out. Though you know how things get misplaced during a deep clean. The chill went marrow deep. 7 days to keep my proof and my peace. I grabbed my keys and drove to Maple and Mint Cafe, my unofficial second office. The barista slid me a nod and a black coffee, no room. In my corner booth, I opened my dashboard. The numbers answered like a choir. $3.4 million in company revenue year to date. 4 full-time team members and a bench of contractors. Clients across 8 states. The kind of stability my parents claimed I lacked because I never made a show of it. A text from Simone lit my screen. Found 3 places that fit. Can you tour this afternoon? I typed back before doubt could lace up its shoes. Yes. One more thing. Preferably something they can't miss when they look out the front window. Her reply came fast. I have just the address. 3 p.m.? For the first time in days, I smiled. Perfect. At 3:07, Simone's sedan rolled to a stop in front of the 2-story brick home directly across from my parents' porch. The sign I'd been eyeing winked at me from the lawn. This is the one, I told her as we walked the flagstone path. I want them to see me. Simone's professional mask tipped into a grin. Most clients talk about what they want to see. Today, I said, is not most clients. From the sidewalk, Renee Hollis, my day-one friend who once believed in a business plan I scribbled on napkins, waved a folder. Brought the lender docs, she called, crossing the street. Inside, Simone rattled off comps and contingencies while I stood at an upstairs window staring straight at the house where I'd been a ghost for almost 3 decades. The view felt like prophecy. My banker loved your statements, Simone said, tablet poised. Not many 29s get approved this clean. If you're serious, we can move fast. My phone buzzed. Tyrese, whatever you're planning, you deserve better than this. I swallowed, then turned. I'm serious, I told Simone. How fast? If we push. Wednesday. I imagined Kenya's crates of equipment arriving to a room that wasn't mine anymore, and a deed with my name on it staring back from across the street. Let's do it, I said. I'll wire the down payment tonight. That evening, while my parents debated Kenya's brand palette and community tiers over dinner, I signed the preliminary docs at my laptop. They still thought I was scrolling job boards. The transfer cleared in a heartbeat. Half down. The rest on a fixed rate of 3.9%. Pride replaced old aches. If I had built this alone, maybe it was mine in a way nothing else had ever been. Was it revenge? Or was it freedom? Maybe it was something quieter. The right to take up space. When I woke before sunrise, paper rustled in my room. Mom stood by my shelf with a trash bag in one hand and my client folders in the other. What are you doing? I asked, stepping between her and my work. Decluttering, she chirped. Kenya needs a pristine energy for her practice. My phone buzzed. Kenya's post, a family photo captioned, making room for the dream studio. So blessed to have supportive parents. I tasted copper. We said Sunday. I reminded her, sliding the folders back into place. Plans changed, she said lightly. Kenya's equipment arrives Friday now. You're so adaptable, baby. That's what I love about you. Adaptable. Code for invisible. I buttered toast beside Dad while he hid from eye contact behind the sports section. Some people in this house don't understand sacrifice, he muttered. I counted the hours until closing. That night, Mom's siblings filled our dining room, Aunt Lorraine, Uncle Marcus, cousins laughing too loudly. During dessert, Mom tapped her spoon. Wonderful news. Aurora Beauty might sponsor Kenya. We're converting Danielle's room into a recording studio. Family supports family. Eyes slid to me. I raised my water glass. We'll see it through. An hour later, Simone texted, found the perfect one. For bedrooms, bay window. Office facing your parents' front door. Virtual tour at 9 a.m.? Yes, first thing, I replied, feeling hope finally stretch its limbs. The next morning, the camera panned across high ceilings, warm hardwood, and a sun-splashed office with built-ins begging for my ledgers. The bay window framed my parents' front steps like a painting. What do you think? Simone asked. It's home, I whispered. How fast can you put keys in my hand? With your numbers and my contacts? Wednesday morning. I nodded, eyes stinging. Not from grief, but from the relief of finally becoming visible on my own terms. By Tuesday afternoon, the papers were spread across a mahogany table in Simone Hart's office, the kind that makes ink feel heavier. My hand trembled only once, on the signature line that turned a plan into a deed. In 20 years, I don't see many 29s this buttoned up, Simone said, gathering the documents with a smile that reached her eyes. Back home, I was alphabetizing client binders when my door swung open without a knock. Kenya swept in with a measuring tape and a self-satisfied hum, stretching metal across my wall like she already owned the air. Just mapping where the softbox and diffuser will live, she said, pacing off steps. It's a tight fit, but I'm a master at optimization. I kept typing, steady as a metronome. Noted. My brand's on track for a 7-figure valuation, she added, chin lifted. I need a space that matches my market. If only she knew that my paperwork quietly out-earned her highlight reels. I saved my document and met her eyes. Sunday will clarify everything. Kenya's laugh came out like glass chimes. Mom and Dad already decided. You don't have a say. I let a small smile curve. Everyone has choices. Some of us simply make them without applause. She blinked, rolled her eyes, and left hard enough to rattle the frame. When the front door finally slammed and the house settled into weeknight silence, Renee Hollis arrived carrying flattened boxes and packing tape like contraband. Operations stand tall, she whispered, grinning as she set a stack on my bed. I brought the essentials list. I hugged her. You're a lifesaver. We worked in practiced rhythm, documents, hard drives, passports, the external backups labeled in my tidy hand. I left just enough clothes and notebooks to preserve the illusion for a few more days. An hour later, 2 college friends I trusted with my life arrived and fell right in step. No questions, only momentum. Renee's phone buzzed. Tyrese says your parents decided on milkshakes after their movie. He'll stall them if they turn around. The text warmed a place in me I'd taught myself to ignore. The kids saw more than they gave him credit for. Near midnight, Simone called. We're confirmed for 9 a.m. closing. Movers at 10. They'll be discreet. Perfect, I said and meant it. Wednesday dawned clear and immodest, as if the sunlight had been saving itself for me. Simone pulled to the curb, stepped out with a jangle of keys, and pressed the metal into my palm. Welcome home, Danielle. By 10:02, the movers were gliding through my parents' foyer with professional silence. I walked them to my room and pointed. Desk, bookcases, the black file cabinet that held every receipt for a life nobody believed was real. Office upstairs, facing the front window. I told them at the new house, and they carried my workstation like a throne. Renee arrived with lunch and a triumphant whistle. This place is a whole sentence, she said, eyes sweeping the bay window. The built-ins, the light. You did that. We sat on the living room floor among open boxes, chewing in companionable quiet. Is this about getting even? She asked finally, voice gentle. Or about being seen? I watched patterns of sun move across the wood. It's about stepping into my own outline, I said. If that's visible, that's fine. If not, I'll still be home. That evening, I built a neat portfolio. Deed, bank letters, audited statements, a one-page overview of my firm that someone could read without defensiveness. In the mirror, I practiced the expression I wanted, calm, grounded, not a trace of pleading. Sunday wouldn't be a performance. It would be a statement of fact. I chose my outfit like armor, a tailored ink blue blazer, ivory blouse, dark trousers, and Grandma Aura's tiny pearl studs. Professional, familiar, unmistakably mine. Back at the old house, I set a single relic on the pillow of the stripped bed, my first ledger, the one with crooked teenage columns and a note on the inside cover. Don't apologize for taking up space. I closed the door and let that version of me rest. Across the street in my new master, I stood at the window and watched Kenya pull up with friends, laughter spilling out of the car like confetti. They drifted upstairs, touring the room I had already vacated, Kenya sketching grand plans with her hands. My phone buzzed. Tyrese, they think you're staying at Renee's. What's the real play? Me. Coffee tomorrow. You'll want a front row seat. I walked the quiet of my house, palm grazing walls that answered back. Mine. On the entry console, I centered the portfolio so it would sit exactly between my hands when the moment came. Tomorrow, I told the rooms, the windows, the light itself. You and I are going to be undeniable. Sunday morning arrived bright and sharp, sunlight streaming like a spotlight through my blinds. I adjusted my blazer, slipped the portfolio under my arm, and walked across the quiet street toward the house I used to call home. The rhythm of my heels on pavement sounded like punctuation. Through the kitchen window, I saw them. Mom arranging flowers, Dad with his newspaper, and Kenya, phone in hand, smiling for a selfie captioned "New studio loading." I knocked twice. Not tentative, deliberate. Mom opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw my professional clothes and calm face. Danielle? We weren't expecting you this early. Did you walk? Where's Renee's car? I walked, I said simply, stepping past her into the familiar foyer that already felt foreign. In the kitchen, Dad glanced up, frowning. Kenya froze mid-scroll. Only Tyrese smiled, small and genuine. Morning, Danny. Morning, I said, pouring myself coffee from the pot, an act I'd done 100 times, but today it was mine on my terms. Kenya broke the silence first. I already picked out color samples for the walls. I'm thinking blush pink with gold accents, very ethereal for my shoots. That sounds nice, I said, settling into my usual seat at the table. She blinked, thrown off balance by my composure. Dad rustled his paper and cleared his throat. When are you moving your things? Madison's equipment arrives Tuesday. This week's already handled, I said, resting the folder on the table. What does that mean? Mom asked, tone tight. I looked at each of them in turn. It means I moved on Wednesday. Kenya let out a small, incredulous laugh. Wait, you're staying with Renee? That's not a long-term solution. Dad joined in with a dry chuckle. You'll be back once rent's due. The world's expensive, Danielle. You don't even have steady employment. Their confidence might have stung once. Today it just sounded like noise. I'm not renting, I said, sliding the folder forward. I bought a house. The silence that followed stretched until I could almost hear the clock tick. Dad's paper stilled. Mom blinked rapidly. Kenya's jaw slackened, mid-eye roll. The one across the street, I continued. The brick one with the bay window. Mom's coffee cup slipped, spilling dark liquid across the white tablecloth. Dad stared like I'd just confessed to sorcery. Kenya's phone slipped from her hand onto her plate with a dull clatter. How? Tyrese breathed, eyes wide but bright with pride instead of disbelief. I met his gaze and smiled. I own a financial consulting firm. We manage portfolios and investment strategies for clients across the country. Dad's mouth opened. Closed. You what? I built it myself, I said evenly. Started small. It's grown. We cleared $3.4 million last quarter. Kenya blinked, eyes darting between me and the folder. Mom recovered first, smoothing her blouse like she could iron out reality. Well, it's probably a starter home with a small mortgage. That neighborhood's affordable. I opened the folder, sliding forward bank statements and the signed deed. I paid half down. The rest is financed under 3.9%. The loan cleared Wednesday. The color drained from Dad's face. You've been hiding money. No, I corrected softly. You've been assuming I didn't have any. The words landed with quiet precision. Mom stood abruptly, clutching her phone. I need to call Aunt Lorraine. She already knows, I said. She's coming to my housewarming next weekend. The next hour blurred in a slow unravel. Mom made half-hearted calls to relatives, her tone growing more brittle each time someone called my purchase inspiring. Dad's arguments lost steam under the weight of proof. Kenya refreshed her phone repeatedly, pretending to scroll, but her reflection in the black screen looked hollow. Through the window, Mr. Jacobs, our longtime neighbor, paused his morning walk to admire the antique writing desk being carried through my new front door by movers. The neighborhood grapevine was alive and well. The doorbell rang. Renee stepped inside holding a potted fiddle-leaf fig and a chilled bottle of champagne. For the new homeowner, she announced, her cheer slicing through the tension like sunlight. I took them both with a grateful smile. You're right on time. Can I see your new place, Danny? Tyrese asked suddenly, standing up. His voice carried something stronger than curiosity. It was loyalty. Of course, I said, rising. Anytime. Dad cleared his throat as we reached the doorway. We should talk about your future visits. Sunday dinners are family tradition. I turned, calm and grounded. I'm still family, Dad. Just living across the street instead of upstairs. Mom tried for a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're just surprised, that's all. Not sudden, I said. Just finally visible. Outside, the late morning sun painted the neighborhood gold. Across the street, a delivery van stopped in front of my house, the driver unloading a bouquet of lilies addressed to me, a gift from one of my corporate partners. I knew exactly how visible it looked from the window behind me. When I glanced back one last time, Mom and Dad stood frozen in the doorway. Kenya, pale, stared at her phone as notifications blinked faster than she could read. Her follower audit had just gone public, exposing half her fans as bots. Success, I murmured to myself, is built in silence, while everyone else performs. I closed their door behind me with a gentle click and stepped into the sunlight, every step toward my house sounding like freedom in heels. 2 weeks passed before I heard the first knock on my new door. Through the peephole I saw Mom, pearls perfectly in place, holding a warm peach cobbler like an olive branch wrapped in sugar. Danielle, sweetheart, she said as I opened the door. I made your favorite. We should talk. I stepped aside. Come in. Her eyes darted over the foyer. The curated furniture, framed certificates, fresh flowers. Success had a scent, and it wasn't pot roast. This is quite the achievement, she murmured, setting the cobbler on the marble island. Your father and I always believed in you, you know. I poured her coffee and said nothing. The silence stretched until she filled it herself. Kenya's been having some complications with sponsorships, she began, stirring her cup without tasting it. Apparently there's a problem with her engagement metrics. All technical stuff, of course. I see. She's under so much stress. Family should support family, right? Mom's hand brushed mine, a practiced gesture of persuasion. Support goes both ways, I said evenly. Her eyes flickered, the first crack in her composure. That afternoon, Dad made his own appearance, catching me outside as I fetched mail. Your mother's upset, he said. We should put this behind us, Danny. Be a family again. I sorted envelopes calmly. I'm open to that, I said. But only if it comes with respect. He blinked, not used to terms he didn't dictate. That evening, texts from Kenya rolled in like storm clouds. You're breaking this family apart. Everyone's talking about you. Mom cried all afternoon. Happy now? I placed my phone face down and returned to my laptop, reviewing quarterly reports. The buzz of messages became background noise, like a faucet I'd finally learned to turn off. By morning, Mom's tone had shifted from guilt to performance. Aunt Lorraine asked why you missed dinner, she said over the phone. People are starting to wonder about our family image. An hour later, Dad left a voicemail implying my business growth seemed too sudden, that it might involve questionable associations. Then came a formal dinner invitation hand-delivered to my mailbox, cream cardstock, cursive script. The Rhodes family requests your presence tomorrow at 7 p.m. to reconcile our differences. In Mom's handwriting, the postscript, after all we've done for you growing up. For the first time since moving out, doubt pricked at me. Maybe I was being too firm. Maybe they didn't know better. Then Renee arrived the next morning with bagels and blunt honesty. Remember the laptop money? She asked, tearing into sesame dough. The one you saved from diner shifts and they gave to Kenya for her creative project? I froze. That was 15 years ago. Patterns don't expire, she said simply. They just get better at disguising themselves. After she left, I pulled out my old journals, years of scribbles recording every time I'd been overlooked, replaced, or drained. Pages that once felt like therapy now read like evidence. Their love had always been transactional. Mine didn't have to be. At 7 p.m. sharp, I walked into my parents' dining room. The good china gleamed, candles flickered, and tension sat heavy beside the mashed potatoes. Danielle, Mom beamed too brightly. You came. I sat, posture straight, the calm center in their storm. Kenya scrolled her phone, sulking. Dad poured wine with exaggerated care. During the salad course, Kenya muttered, "Not everyone can buy self-worth." I met her eyes. True. Some people have to earn it. Her fork clattered against the plate. When the main course arrived, Dad cleared his throat. We're here to move forward as a family. I am too, I said quietly. But that requires honesty. Before they could launch into rehearse speeches, I opened a folder, copies of old withdrawal slips, bank transfers, and notes from the years they'd redirected my savings to fund Kenya's ventures. Mom's breath caught. Dad's face reddened. That was for the family, he barked. No, I corrected. It was from the family, specifically from me. Kenya shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything. I'm the one who brings attention to this household. You're just bitter. I stayed seated, calm. You brought attention. I built stability. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that doesn't break easily. Mom finally exhaled. You've made your point, Danielle. What do you want? Boundaries, I said. Real ones. Mutual respect. No more borrowing, no more manipulation, and no more rewriting history. Kenya sneered. You think you're better than us? I think I've worked for peace, I said softly. What you do with yours is up to you. They had given me an ultimatum once, surrender my room or leave. I'd chosen to on the street instead. I stood, gathering my portfolio. I'm willing to stay connected, but not controlled. Mom's voice cracked. You can't just walk out again. I smiled gently. I'm not walking out. I'm walking home. Through the window, my house glowed, steady, warm, and visible. For the first time, their reflections looked smaller than mine. Outside, Tyrese waited by the gate, hands in his jacket pockets. You okay? He asked quietly. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. He nodded, eyes thoughtful. Then let's go home. Together, we crossed the street, not in defiance, but in clarity. Behind us, the porch light of my parents' house flickered once, then dimmed. Ahead of us, mine shone steady, unblinking, and new. 6 months later, autumn sunlight spilled through the wide windows of my living room, painting gold across the oak floors. The house no longer felt like proof, it felt like peace. The Rhodes Consulting Group logo hung in a brushed steel frame above my desk. What started as a secret side hustle now pulsed with life. 7 employees, clients in 5 countries, and a steady rhythm of purpose. On the wall behind me, new plaques gleamed. Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year, and Top 40 Under 35. Across the street, my parents' curtains stayed closed. The for sale sign that had been staked in their lawn leaned slightly in the fall breeze. Kenya's last brand partnership post had gone up weeks earlier, an apology video wrapped in self-pity, the kind her dwindling followers could see right through. I took a long sip of coffee and smiled faintly. It wasn't revenge anymore, just perspective. The same peace that used to feel impossible now lived quietly in everything I owned. "Morning, Danny," called Mrs. Jacobs, waving from her driveway. "Your mums are gorgeous this year." "Thank you." I laughed, waving back. It still surprised me being noticed. Inside, a catering team unpacked trays for my housewarming/anniversary brunch. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same dining table where my parents had issued their ultimatum now stood in my home, repurposed for celebration instead of control. I'd bought it at their estate sale 2 months earlier, paying twice its listed price. Kenya had glared from the porch as the movers carried it away. The doorbell rang. Tyrese stood there, shoulders broader now, a quiet confidence settling around him like his own grown-up suit. He held a potted snake plant wrapped in brown paper. "You're early?" I said, ushering him in. "Figured you might need help setting up," he said, placing the plant on the counter. "Looks incredible in here." I smiled. "You've been good." "Better than good," he said. "Got accepted into the engineering program at Central Tech." "You were right, I just needed to stop playing small." "That's what family's supposed to sound like," I said softly. He laughed. "Remember when Dad asked where you saw yourself in 5 years? Guess you had the right answer after all." I nodded. "Now I just want to build something that matters, not just wealth, but opportunities." On my desk lay the final draft of a scholarship fund I'd been developing for young women from families that dismissed their ambitions. Each award carried a small bronze plaque inscribed, "For the girl they underestimated." Yesterday, I'd mentored a 20-year-old named Lyric, whose parents told her business degrees were a waste. Watching her eyes light up as she realized she wasn't crazy for wanting more reminded me of every version of me I'd ever silenced. "You know," I told Tyrese, "freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just breathes easy." He nodded slowly, understanding. By noon, guests began arriving: Renee, Simone, my team, and a few local entrepreneurs who had become friends. Laughter filled the house, bright and full. The same walls that once echoed with loneliness now hummed with possibility. Later, when the crowd thinned, I stepped out onto the porch with a glass of sparkling cider. Across the street, a moving truck idled in front of my parents' house. Kenya stood near the curb, phone dangling loosely in her hand, hair tied back, eyes hollowed by exhaustion. My parents loaded boxes into their car, their once pristine front lawns stripped of perfection. For a moment I felt something like sympathy, not because I missed them, but because I understood them now. They'd built the life on appearances. I'd built mine on substance. When Mom glanced over, I raised my glass politely. Not triumph, not mockery, just closure. They had told me to give up my room, so I built an empire from it. They had tried to shrink my world, so I bought one right across from theirs. That night, I stood in my bedroom doorway, the moonlight spilling across crisp white sheets. My laptop screen glowed faintly, reflecting the line from my journal that started it all. "Don't apologize for taking up space." Now that space was mine, not borrowed, not conditional, not approved by anyone else. I crawled into bed, the city humming softly beyond the windows, and for the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove anything. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud, it's living well. Danielle didn't raise her voice or fight for scraps of validation. She built something her family couldn't ignore, a life they once said she wasn't capable of having. Her story is a reminder that quiet perseverance can be louder than any argument, that success built in silence eventually speaks for itself. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you were too quiet, this one's for you. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if your family tried to erase your space? And if you love powerful, full-circle revenge stories with happy endings, hit subscribe, like, and share the story. You're watching Revenge Tales by Camera, where every episode proves that the best payback is becoming everything they said you couldn't be.